This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
There is an alien among us. A superior being from a place called Krypton. Deep in the heart of the city, he watches for signs of danger. Ready to act on a moment's notice. His true name is Kal-El. You know him as Superman.
Maybe you ladies haven't heard about me.
The future of Metropolis is in the hands of the Man of Steel. Get up!
Superman!
Get up. He's gonna be busy.
I said get up.
Superman.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 195 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal, and with me my good friend, good brother, the man that runs our Twitter account, and pretty much the biggest Superman fan that I know, it's Liam. Liam, we are, in terms of calendar page, we are in the second month of the year 2022, and we are, that means we're starting to review a new subject matter for the month. So, as we mentioned last week, I figured it's been a little bit. I think it's time to chat a little bit about the Man of Steel, and so we're going to be talking about a Superman the Animated Series episode today.
That's right, and it's one that has some kind of funny personal significance to us. Maybe not in a positive way, but yes, we are in fact back talking about the Man of Steel, Superman the Animated Series, and this week we are talking about the episode Solar Power.
That is right, and as you mentioned, this has the dubious distinction, I believe, for probably being the episode that for whatever reason seemed to be in such heavy rotation that at least for those early years of Superman the Animated Series, I feel like we saw this episode, I don't know, 500 times.
Yeah, this was one that was very regularly on the Saturday mornings, the new Batman Superman Adventures block on Kids WB. This one, along with there's certain new Batman Adventures episodes that we'll get to someday down the road, and we'll have similar things to say about them, I'm sure. But yeah, this, as far as Superman episodes go, this is one that when I saw it, when I watched it this week for the show, I was like, yep, there are just certain moments of this episode that were so etched in my brain, like so clearly and perfectly, that I was like, yep, this is the only thing that kind of happens when you're a kid and you're watching the same thing you've seen 10 times, but it's Superman, so you're going to watch it. And especially us, because TV watching wasn't necessarily a regular occurrence for our household growing up too much. So we took what we could get, and this episode was far too often all we could get when it came to superhero action on a Saturday morning.
There you go. Absolutely. And I guess that will lead us into our official IMDb synopsis, brought to you by The Pod Tower, which you can now follow at youtube.com/The Pod Tower. That's right. youtube.com/The Pod Tower. Go on and check it out. Subscribe to us, and not only will you get the most recent episodes, as well as our entire back catalog, you can get other content from other DCAU creators and our friends as well. Liam, the IMDb synopsis for this week's episode, which originally aired back on the Kids WB on September the 26th, 1997, meaning we're about to hit the 25-year anniversary of this episode in just a few short months.
That's right, and this is the synopsis for Solar Power, which was written by Bob Goodman, directed by, good heavens, I'm going to try my best with this name, Kazuhide Tomonaga.
Man, I think you nailed it. Like, I'm not an expert, and please tweet us at DCAU Review
yes.
if Liam butchered that. He didn't hesitate. he went right to it. He hit it.
My years of watching Japanese professional wrestling have prepared me to an extent to figure out the way that like vowels and things are used in Japanese names. But again, I could still be very off base, so please let me know if I am. But music by Christopher Carter and animation by TMS, and that synopsis reads as such. Edward Leitner returns as Luminous to seek revenge against Superman with a way to depower him enough to get it.
Poorly worded.
It's a run-on sentence. Could use a comma.
Yep.
And a bit vague as well. Feels like you read the synopsis and not the cliff notes and didn't actually read the book here. But yes, we can jump into plot here. But yes, we're picking up where we left off, I guess, to an extent. Edward Leitner, who we previously met in the episode Target, who had sort of hatched this devious he was both a stalker and an attempted murderer of one Lois Lane in a previous episode. Superman stops him. And as we see him here, he is walking around in prison, and he has some sort of device attached to his belt. And we find out very quickly that he can use this to manipulate light in all sorts of weird and...
Behind the line, Leitner. Beautiful day, isn't it? The sunshine is so energizing. That's close enough. Close enough to what? I'm not even here. Leitner?
Get a doctor.
Is he breathing?
I don't know. Hey, did you see something?
So long, Warden. Thanks for everything.
What? This is one of those things where we create a device or a power set, and then it's magic from here on out. He can turn invisible. He can make holograms of himself. Those holograms can shoot lasers. He can also make the holograms solid and let them like physically attack someone. A lot going on with Mr. Leitner's power set that we'll get into certainly in this category and probably in visuals. But he's off to the races. He escapes prison, and very quickly we see him going right back after Lois, but maybe not for the reasons we would have expected coming into this episode.
That's right. So we learn, of course, that news has spread very fast, especially at the Daily Planet, of Leitner's escape, and Clark very concerned on the phone with Lois, and we kind of catch up to them as Lois is already out on the case, attempting to follow some leads to find out just where Leitner could be getting off to. And Clark, very, very concerned, wonders aloud why what happened to her just laying low, and she said that she got bored and couldn't wait any longer. So she's on one of those tram things that runs sort of parallel to a bridge that is always used as a plot device to put people in danger, and this time is no different as well. As Leitner appears sort of floating in the sky, as we learn, and he lasers the cup link that's keeping it attached to the wire or the line that it's on. So Lois is in immediate danger, but as you mentioned, he makes it very clear she's not the target, pun intended, this time, and that he has bigger fish to fry, that she's simply the bait. So of course, that returns to that of course refers to the Man of Steel himself, as Superman arrives shortly thereafter, and we notice that as the cable car drops towards the water, Superman, of course, flies down to rescue Lois, but he seems to be having a little bit of trouble with it. It's too heavy for him, he says, so he tries to get Lois to escape out of the car quicker. he is able to get Lois to escape out of the car just before it hits the water, and probably bobs around down there with, as we've mentioned before, just thousands of millions of dollars of machinery from airplanes and robots and helicopters. Now there's a cable car floating in the Metropolis River. So we have all kinds of machinery down there. The cable car joins the watery grave with those other pieces of transportation that we've witnessed go in there. So as Superman is sort of recovering from that moment, Lois, of course, is deeply concerned, questioning him if he's okay, and he's very concerned. Leitner shows up and kind of informs Superman that this is just going to be the start of what's to come, and that he can expect to see him again very soon.
Lois! I can't hang on for long. The tram's too heavy. Just wait, Superman. This is only the beginning. Leitner! It's Luminous now. Tell me, Superman, feeling a little under the weather? Quick! Give me your hand! Yes, tend to Lois. This was just a test. You'll realize what I've done to you in time. See you soon, even if you don't see me.
Are you all right?
I don't know.
That's right. So as Luminous seemingly escapes, and Superman is sort of continuing to try to figure out what exactly is going on with his power set. It had been sort of overcast and stormy in Metropolis, and as the clouds sort of finally give way, we notice a very unfamiliar sight for the usual beautiful blue skies of Metropolis, as everything is red, Taylor's version, and he has in fact used, as we find out through some pseudoscience explanations, utilizing some LexCorp satellites. He has created a force field which reflects all of the sun's rays. He hasn't actually turned the sun red, but he's used these holograms or this force field to basically reflect the UV rays and turn them into red sunlight, which is now robbing Superman of his strength and power. And as Clark and Lois and Jimmy are sort of continuing to investigate, of course, Lois goes right to the source and asks Lex, how could Luminous possibly be getting control of your satellites without you knowing? And then Lex is very quick to sort of brush her off and sort of scoff at the idea that he would put the entire planet at risk just to settle a personal score with Superman. Although he does seem, we don't really ever get, I guess, straight confirmation whether he kind of left the back door open at the very least.
I think that the whole visual part of that he's speaking to Lois on his Bluetooth headset from 1997, which, hey, they got that advancement in technology correct. He's in his office practicing some archery, and he says that line with Lois, do you think that I would put losing millions of dollars aside just to settle a personal score with Superman?
This force field is filtering our sunlight so that only the red wavelengths get through.
Come on, Lex. Those are your satellites up there, and Leitner's worked for you before. How do you expect me to believe you have nothing to do with it?
What you believe makes little difference to me. The fact is, I did provide Leitner resources while behind bars, but only for legitimate LexCorp research. I had no idea he'd escape, and I certainly didn't tell him to hijack my satellites for his own revenge.
Heck, why not? You'd love to see Superman dead.
Oh, please, Lois, forget that I'm losing millions in communications revenues. Do you really think I'd jeopardize the welfare of the planet just to settle my personal grudge with Superman?
It's at that point he launches an arrow and it lands dead center in the middle of the target, which kind of and he gives this sort of like subtle grin, which makes me think that yeah, they're on target. That's a bullseye with what exactly what happened. But you are correct. They don't come out and verbally say for sure that he was behind it. But one would have to assume that in order to get some sort of piece of technology into Rikers Island or wherever Luminous was being held, that he had to have had some help somehow. And his old employer is probably again who has more than enough motive to do so. Probably suspect number one as to who is responsible.
Yeah, that's right. So as I said, Clark and Lois and Jimmy are sort of continuing to try to investigate, but as they begin to maybe find some loose ends to look into, Clark, of course, sees a signal in the sky. Imagine that. Imagine a signal in the sky to call a superhero to the scene of a crime. But I was actually kind of surprised we didn't get a direct. Like, it was so overt that I thought for sure we'd get some sort of Batman reference here, but we didn't. But yes, this is where we find out, I guess, part B of Luminous's new power set, which is that he can create these holograms, which doesn't really seem very dangerous. But then, of course, he notes that the holograms are made of light, and that means they can channel and fire lasers, even though they're not physically there. So Superman kind of has a brief battle with them. He's eventually able to take down the one Luminous that's still there, who sort of retreats at that point and lets him know that the next time they meet, it'll be the end of Superman. It's kind of very ominous, and that kind of sets up, I guess, the second part here is Superman's kind of really out of sorts here, and we're not quite sure what's going on. But I guess Lois and Jimmy, of course, having that knack for getting into trouble, kind of helps set up our final act here.
That's right. Yeah, of course, they follow up on a lead as to where the signals could be coming from these satellites, and where Lex's technology could have been originated from to potentially been hacked or used for nefarious purposes. So they, of course, go to an address where there's supposed to be a Lex Corp site. They arrive and there's no building to be found, but wouldn't you know, Lois looks up in the sky and wouldn't you know it, there's a bird.
And this is the address. LexCorp's satellite comm, currently out of use.
And out of sight.
There's supposed to be a building here.
Look, up in the sky.
It's a bird.
Yeah, but what's it sitting on? Come on.
It's a bird. And there just happens to be a bird that's sort of floating in the sky, clearly perched on something. So this leads them to believe that there's more than meets the eye to what's happening right here. And they sort of literally walk into an invisible building at this point. They stumble into the building and find their way in. It's rather dark. And as Jimmy searches for a light switch, of course, Luminous reveals himself to be waiting inside for them, much to their surprise and to their dismay. We then cut to Professor Hamilton and Superman, who are attempting to outfit his Kryptonian childhood rocket in an attempt to launch Superman into space and to get that prepared so that he can hopefully take down and shoot down some of the rotating satellites that are causing this force field, or this sort of filter that's giving the sun the red hue. And as he's about to do that, and as they're discussing that, Luminous appears and lets Superman know that unfortunately that perhaps that might not be his number one priority at this point, as he reveals that he has Lois and Jimmy captured and is threatening their lives, of course, unless Superman follows him. So despite Professor Hamilton's urgent pleas that he's almost completely depowered, Superman ignores it and, of course, follows the bouncing ball to where Luminous leads him. And Superman enters the same invisible building. Of course, this time Luminous no longer needs it to be invisible any longer, and no longer needs it to be camouflaged. And Superman, of course, sees that there's a giant LexCorp building with multiple satellites on the roof that are apparently causing this entire ordeal. So Superman, of course, enters, and when he enters, he's actually taken back in time, it seems, as he enters an old Western saloon, which, of course, we realize very quickly is simply a mirage, a use of smoke and mirrors, if you will. And so Superman, of course, realizes at this point that the person behind it, this saloon, is standing behind the bar, and it's Luminous, of course, Leitner, now known as Luminous. And he's ready to take his revenge on a very weakened Superman, including beginning to create, as you mentioned, these holograms that, again, for the plot of the story, can create somewhat solid holograms. I don't know. I feel like a hologram by definition is not solid, but whatever. He figured out how to do it. So he begins sort of a beat down on Superman, and as Superman begins to fight back, despite his weakened state, he begins to fight back just a little bit. Leitner very quickly switches the scene on him, and Superman wanders into a different area. And this time he's in a swashbuckling pirate scheme, I believe, is our second spot that he finds himself in. And we get Leitner again having fun playing dress up, as now he's a pirate, and he appears to have the dark saber from Star Wars The Mandalorian. He has some sort of, I joke, of course, but he does have some sort of sword that is made out of light energy that he is swinging around at Superman, and he makes Superman walk the plank to the point where Superman backs up and realizes he's sort of up against some sort of material, which I don't know how this room works. They don't really ever explain it. I guess it's all projected screens or something like that. So he realizes it, and he allows Leitner to lunge at him with his sword. The sword sort of goes into the screen projector, and he uses it to cut a giant hole after foiling him. This, of course, leads him to sort of the middle of I guess the research lab at this point, and he sees a giant, rather large, science fiction-y looking machine that I guess is responsible for launching the satellite, or controlling the satellites in space. So it's at this point that he also happens to stumble upon Lois and Jimmy, and they do their very best not only to alert him of their presence, but alert him of the presence of somebody sneaking up behind him. But unfortunately, it's too late, as Leitner is right there. And so begins what appears to be the demise of our friend, as he's ready at this point to polish off the Man of Steel once and for all.
Yeah, and it's funny, and I wouldn't say this is even like a negative to the plot, because I think you can say that Leitner, Luminous, is kind of so deranged by this point that even though he has Superman dead to rights, he has all this amazing technology at his disposal. And the end game, he just picks up a gun. Like, it's the real him, and he's got a gun, and, and he's just gonna shoot Superman to death with his laser pistol.
Just as well that you found your way through. I'll enjoy finishing this myself. How does it feel to be mortal, Superman? To know pain? Well, don't worry. You won't have to endure it for long.
And I guess you could say that, it's an ego thing, and Superman, ruined his previous plans, and so he wants to physically be there to do it. But yes, that is sort of his ultimate demise. Is Superman's able to kind of through some ingenuity is able to grab a piece of metal and reflect the laser back into the machine that is causing the satellites to create this red sunlight force field. And once it's destroyed, we see the true yellow sun start to shine through Superman as he begins to come to Luminous tries to sort of physically beat him to death, I guess. And he gets in a few good shots before we see Superman's strength sort of start to return. And then we get a real satisfying, just straight up, just a good old punch to the face. Superman just knocks him across the room, and then he bonks into the computer, and then like a big metal plate from the computer falls and and concusses him. Luminous is dead, I think. Actually, no, we know he's not because he shows up in Justice League, but he takes quite a walloping here at the end there. But yes, we get kind of a nice moment at the end there to wrap up as Superman takes Luminous outside. There's reporters and police waiting there, and Luminous is very upset that all of these lights are flashing in his eyes. So Superman assures him that he'll be going to a nice dark prison cell soon enough as he turns him over to Maggie Sawyer and Dan Turpin.
Superman, how do you feel? Disable the satellite. Come here, big guy. Hey, give me some.
What happened?
Hey, listen, Superman, listen.
Get those lights out of my eyes. You heard him. Put him somewhere nice and dark.
Get a nice moment as Superman flies up into the sky and towards that big bright yellow sun, and all is right in the world as we wrap things up this week.
That's right. So I guess we could begin to get into our plot scores, Liam. I will say, as you mentioned, this was an episode that I was quite familiar with the story beats and recalling a lot of the details. I actually hadn't seen this episode. I don't know. I think I probably avoided it like the plague when it came out on DVD originally, and there wasn't really any reason to revisit this episode for a very long time. So there were a few beats that I had missed. With that said, watching it from an adult, we're doing this from a perspective of looking at it with a critical lens and trying to look at it as a whole here and various different aspects of it. I will say it fits. It's a nice little revenge tale from a villain that is returning from a previous story. So there were aspects of it that felt like the beats were similar to if you switch the characters from like Batman and the Riddler, I think that it could easily work just that same way. It's just the story of a villain who's been foiled by your main hero. They're out to seek revenge, and they have to figure out how to one up them. They've made them look weak, literally in this case, and the hero has to use his ingenuity and his resources to figure out how he's going to overcome being caught off guard by this foe. I think it works. I know that the turning the sun red thing is like a very old Superman go-to. That's something that's been done a lot. It's probably 1 and 1A with like various different colors of kryptonite. So it's a plot device that Superman writers go to anytime they really need to make Superman human, which in a way you kind of have to do because Luminous supposedly is just a normal human being here. He's not an alien. He's nothing special about him. But I like that it wasn't like he actually turned the sun red. There was some actual reasoning behind it and with Luthor kind of being potentially involved with it or behind it. I liked that little aspect of it too. I will say that the fact that they just decided to make the Luminous suit whatever they needed it to do, that's a little bit annoying. That feels a little bit lazy to me at times. It's just like, oh well, we're gonna make it do whatever it has to do in order for it to be a plot point for the episode. And I get it. It's also still a children's cartoon, so there has to be, there is some fun. You can have fun with it, sure. But at the same time, it does feel a little bit like, all right, come on, like, all right, now he can fly. He's flying now. Is that really him flying? Is it a hologram flying? All right, well, it gets a hologram. Okay. Oh wait, now he can make solid holograms It's not just that that he uses lasers. They're also solid. Like, okay, all right. And it hurts, and he's like powerful. He has strength with it. I don't know. So well, all of that said, I don't think it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I will say that. And I think that may have helped it. I think that the fact that Superman at the end ultimately kind of gets the final say, and that sweet sort of bit where the yellow sun returns, it begins to shine on him, and he catches Luminous's fist, and as you mentioned, a very satisfying sort of punch that hurls Luminous across the room. That was a feel good. And then, as you mentioned, that final scene as he's flying towards the sun at the end, like, yeah, that's a great little bow on the episode. I like that. So for all those reasons, I ended up giving plot a 7 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I was a little bit lower. I went 6 out of 10, not much, but yeah, I think most of it works as far as the bullet points of it. Bringing back this guy. He had this sort of weird laser light vest in the first episode, so bringing him back as a more traditional supervillain and kind of ramping up what he can do, I think all of that's fine. I do agree that, because at first it seems like it's just all like it can kind of absorb and manipulate light, which seems, that's fine. Like, I can accept that. But then, yeah, once it's making holograms that can also shoot lasers, that can also turn solid and punch people, and all of that, it gets a little bit like. And then he also has like the holodeck from Star Trek or something, or the Danger Room from X-Men or something, in his that he's built in this LexCorp warehouse or whatever. It's a little bit, all right, it feels like maybe we just had some fun ideas of like, hey, what if we had a villain that could do something with holograms, and we could get Superman on a pirate ship or in the Old West or something. Right. And yeah, we'll certainly talk about that in visuals. There's definitely a lot of fun stuff in that regard. But yeah, the episode itself, I think it's just, yeah, it's all right. Like I said, I think it's a cool use. I do think maybe you could have done a little bit more with Lois in this episode, because the first episode was so focused around her and him being, and the reveal that comes in the end of that episode that he is incredibly obsessed with this woman and has sort of stalked her and attempted to murder her multiple times, and the fact that he kind of just blows it off as he just kind of uses her for bait, and then he even captures her a second time later on along with Jimmy, and it's not even really a second thought for him. He just kind of uses them as bait to draw in Superman. And yeah, I think maybe you could have had a bigger role for Lois in this episode or something that would have maybe made it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, like I said, I think the strength of this episode come in some of the other categories we'll talk about, but certainly nothing wrong with it, really. Nothing terrible when it comes to the plot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move on to our next category, Liam, which will be our visuals and animation. TMS, as you mentioned, was responsible for this week's animation, and our director, Kazuhide Tomonaga, was responsible for another one of my favorite visually strong episodes. He actually, of course, did the last episode with Leitner in it. He was also responsible for directing the episode A Little Piece of Home, but also Fun and Games, which of course was a very visually exciting and fun episode featuring the Toyman, if I recall, Superman versus a giant duck.
Yes.
So that has the visual distinction for that. But this one, you can tell, I think, that things are a little bit more exaggerated with some of the way the movements and some of the facial reactions and some of the ways that the characters themselves look. But I think between his direction and I think the writing from Bob Goodman for this episode, we got, as you mentioned, I think for me at least, I think visuals are the strongest point of this episode, which is interesting because we have a lot of downtime, it feels like, at times, where Superman is, we have sort of the reverse Rocky montage where instead of Superman getting stronger, it's Superman getting weaker as he can't pick up the rock, and he can't, he's getting weaker. He can't use his heat vision anymore. And we do get some like Clark and Jimmy and Lois standing around in the Daily Planet. But I think because they decided to go so goofy and sort of outlandish with what the powers that Leitner use, and because it was sort of nondescript and they just had as much fun with it as they could, that was really a strength for the visuals, because it allowed them to just kind of do whatever the heck they wanted and have fun with it, whether it made sense or not.
Yeah. I think the things that stood out for me are, other than Luminous's, we've already talked about his various sort of wacky powers. The Luminous suit itself, it's a little Tron-y.
For sure, 100%.
And I also think, especially once he starts multiplying, there's a couple of X-Men multiple man costumes that this is pretty reminiscent of as well. So I think there's some influence there too. But yeah, I think a lot of the fun visuals, and I really liked the kind of the color palette changes from when Superman sort of first flies into the scene when Lois is in trouble in the cable car, and it's dark and stormy, and so you have the vibrant red and blues against sort of this grayish background as he's sort of flying in, and then that's sort of juxtaposed a few minutes later after this this quick action beat of him trying to lift the cable car and really struggling with it, and then sort of just saving Lois at the last second, and he's sort of worn out, as you already mentioned. He's sort of trying to lift the rock, and then he tries to melt the rock, and then he tries to punch the rock, and it's not working. He's so frustrated trying to figure out what's going on, and as that's happening, you see the clouds start to part, and all of a sudden you see these bright red skies and the sun of it, and the color palette of the episode really for the rest of the episode. And that, like we said, it's a pretty common occurrence in, say, the new Batman adventures to see red skies, but not at all normal in Superman the Animated Series. So it was kind of fun. I thought that gave it a really unique feel for the rest of the episode, as you kind of have that constant of the red hue kind of all over everything throughout the rest of the episode, at least everything that's outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a unique way of doing that, and as you mentioned, the hue that went over everything, I thought was it was unique enough to make this episode stand out. It's the only episode that we really have to worry about the red sun tactic being used, but it worked for this episode and did give it that unique standout there. I think it also makes the point at the end, once the machine is destroyed and the sun returns to its normal, blue skies and yellow shade, that it really makes that contrast as the sun sort of begins to shine on Superman seem even more. It just adds a little emphasis, I feel like, to that moment, because the sun begins to really shine. You can feel Superman energizing in those moments. So I did really enjoy that. One of the first things, going back to the very first scene, was that I thought was interesting is, I guess, Luminous, this you could compare this technology that he uses, at least in the opening scene, to sort of seemingly turn invisible, and then he turns his helicopter invisible. Is this the same technology that Shield uses in the Marvel movies to turn their helipads, or whatever they're called, helicarriers, invisible? Also, I think that's what it gave me the reminder of. It's just like a flying invisible machine here. Amazing that Leitner knew how to fly a helicopter also. Good luckily for that guy. I do think also, I think the first, giving you the first sign that something is amiss with Clark's powers, where in that scene in the Daily Planet where we first see him, he's sitting at his desk and he drops a pen and he lifts the desk. He looks around to make sure nobody's looking, and then he lifts the desk up to pick up the pen. It's like, this is really awesome. If I was Superman and I had these powers, I would also use my powers to be lazy at times and not bend all the way to the floor to pick up the pen. Super hilarious. I thought that was really, really great, and a pretty humorous little scene there that they ended up doing. But I also thought it was interesting that, at least initially, when he was kind of doing the phasing in and out, sort of setting him apart just to emphasize his powers were, of course, rooted in the whole manipulation of light, that when Luminous disappears, both at the prison and then later on after his first interaction with Superman, he turns invisible, and then there are these little sparkles that come on afterwards. I thought that was a nice little touch that, again, wasn't necessarily needed to get the point across that he was no longer there or no longer visible, but it kind of just gives you the idea that there's still flashes of light hitting off of wherever it is that he's bending or manipulating the way that the light works. So I thought that was just a nice little touch to kind of add to the visualization of what the power of that suit can do.
Yeah, I like that. I like the sort of the it's like a black and orange suit, and he's kind of phasing in and out, using those invisibility powers, or when he's making the copies of himself, the orange parts kind of turn this bright white color, and even when he sort of fades away, you sort of see the outline of the orange parts still in that like bright white color. They kind of fade away last after the rest of his body already has. So yeah, they definitely did a fun job sort of visualizing how his suit works. There's a part where Superman does finally kind of grab a hold of him, and he's able to kind of like release a bunch of light from his belt, which I thought looked very cool as well. So definitely a fun character, and one that you can understand why they thought it was worth bringing back and kind of upping his game to be a little bit more super powerful. And I was curious, and I didn't see anything about this. I kind of looked around. We already mentioned that it looked like maybe there was some multiple man influence on him. Like, obviously the other thing to compare him to is like Dr. Light. And I couldn't think of a reason that like they couldn't have just used Dr. Light if they wanted to. Other than that they already had this character who maybe had a similar deal, but choosing not to call him Dr. Light, because it's not as if they wouldn't make a new character that with that same name or something. Like Dr. Light is such a sacred character that you couldn't call him something else or something. But so I was just curious if there was, I would be curious to hear if there was any sort of thought of calling him Dr. Light, or if that's just kind of a coincidence and he just kind of had a similar powers. I guess you could also say he has a little bit of similarity with the way the light powers work and the holograms and things like that. Of, as you mentioned, it could have been something like that What Is Reality Riddler episode, or a Mysterio, or a somebody like that, Mirror Master, any of those kind of villains that use different types of illusions to confuse our heroes. But yeah, I'd be curious to see if there was like a specific reason why this was an original character and not just the Dr. Light from the comics.
Yeah, that is a good question, and I wonder if it was just earlier on in that obviously in Target he's not quite the supervillain that he is here. Obviously, as you mentioned, he has the light vest, and he's more of just kind of a creepy stalker that's setting up all of these traps to kill Lois. So the fact that they went in this direction with him, I just wonder if maybe Mr. Goodman looked at it and said, hey, what if we took some of the, his name's Lightner, he had this set of powers in the last episode with his vest. What if we took it a step further, and what if we just applied some of these characteristics to him and called him something different? It's also not as if we've never seen that happen either, where you just borrow certain characteristics from other different characters and just name them different things, and as sort of an homage. But yeah, that's a very, very interesting question as to why they may not have gone in that direction, or why they used the same powers but didn't perhaps use one of the other more classic DCAU or DC comics Rogue's name for him. So yeah, good point there. Good point pointing that out. A couple other things I think as far as what I liked. I did like the we already mentioned the Lex Luthor scene with him shooting the arrow. I enjoyed that. I especially like the little smug smirk at the end that he gives after he hits the bullseye. I also think that of course, you mentioned the Superman signal being in the sky. That, of course, a very overt reference to Batman. I enjoyed that as well. Disappointed, there wasn't an actual reference to the Dark Knight, or even just a throwaway line that would allude to Batman in some way from either Superman or Luminous, perhaps. We also, in this episode, I don't know if we mentioned it when we were discussing the plot, but Superman actually bleeds in this episode. And a little callback to what is it, Superman 2, is it the Christopher Reeve movie where he bleeds, I think, too, in that movie? Or is it So a little homage to Superman being depowered here gives us an opportunity to see something we rarely saw in the DCAU, let alone our most powerful superhero doing it. We get a little bloodshot in there, and I thought that was it was very quick, but it's also very effective in communicating that, hey, Superman isn't normal here. He ain't feeling too well, and this is a little scary. Like, it's enough to freak you out a little bit here that he's feeling pain and bleeding at the same time. But I felt like, even though it was just a very small bit, that was actually a pretty effective visual there to kind of communicate exactly what the story was telling, which is this is bad.
Yeah, no, I thought that's a good point. We don't, as you mentioned, we don't get to see that sort of thing very much on these shows, and it's a good way to kind of communicate that this is kind of a pretty unique threat, and I think even the way, like, later as the episode goes on and he's losing more and more of his power, just like little things like the way he lands when he's flying and things like that. He kind of has to take a step or two when he lands. You can just tell that he's not right. It's those little extra attention to details just to let you know that he's really kind of having a lot of trouble with this. I thought they definitely really went the extra mile with that sort of thing.
Yeah, and wrapping things up, I think this, of course, we talked about it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense as to how or why, but the scenes of Superman fighting Luminous in the Old West saloon, and then on the pirate ship, those are fun scenes. They don't make a whole lot of sense as to how or why they're happening, but hey, they happen, and they're fun visuals. At least I even enjoyed that as Superman is on the pirate ship, the skies of like this pirate ship in the open seas are also blood red still, sort of as a way to taunt him or to remind him that he's in this perilous position here. And then I think one of the best shots maybe for the entire series here is that final shot where they did pretty much a 180 pan from the front of Superman, and then he passes the camera and heads towards the sun as the episode comes to a close. I remembered that shot specifically from this episode, and I was anticipating it because you get like, he's re-energizing, he's flying back towards the sun, and it's just I love that he disappears and the sun is the last thing that you see before it fades to black. Just a really great visual for it, and I thought was really, really a strong way to end the episode.
Agreed. Yeah. So I think for all those reasons that I've talked about, I ended up giving visuals a very strong 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave it the same exact score, a 9 out of 10. It's a really good one, and I think that it breaks up the action well enough, and all those other things that we talked about. A very enjoyable visual for this week. All right, Liam, let's move to our next category, which is going to be music. The legend Christopher Carter, responsible for this week's music. What did you have as far as your musical notes?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the music in this episode. I didn't necessarily find like a specific Luminous theme, but I thought there's a really ominous tone. I think especially in that first sequence when there's sort of have all that dark, stormy weather, and Superman sort of flies into scene. You hear just a touch of the Superman theme, but then as that goes on, you have kind of the peril of the situation, and he just pulls Lois out of the way. But when the clouds start to part, we talked about it in visuals, and I think in plot as well. But that sequence is so striking to me, and you get not only you get this, you get the strings, you get a little bit of might be a flute or something, some sort of light horn. And then you also have like this little bit of what sounds like a xylophone to me, or light cymbals sort of brought in. It's just this really ominous feeling as Superman is sort of looking up at the clouds parting and seeing this red sun. It really gives you that feeling of like, oh man, he's in trouble now. I thought the music in that sequence was outstanding. And then some of the fun bits, as we said, with the holograms near the end, you get kind of some classic Old West style music as he goes into the tavern at first, and then that kind of transfers into more sort of traditional adventure music as he's being attacked on the pirate ship, and then we get that towards the end. And then I think the biggest, and then a classic moment, I think, as you mentioned, is that final shot of we kind of see Lois and Jimmy looking over at Superman, and we see Superman smile and then fly up and around towards the sun. And as we get that, we kind of get the full Superman theme played out there in a very sort of dramatic and triumphant way, as we know that we've got our happy ending. So yeah, I was very impressed with the music this week.
Yeah, it is really good. I think I couldn't tell if it was a Luminous theme. I'd have to go back and listen to Target to see if it's similar. It was similar composition, I think, maybe to, it had some Metallo notes in there. It's not the Metallo theme, but similarly constructed, I feel like, with the sort of the tension building, like design.
Those really sharp strings.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, exactly. And I'd be interested. I'll have to go back at some point and check out Target to see if it, if it's the same theme that sort of plays in that final scene when he's revealed as the villain behind it. But that's it. That, I think, all of this, as Superman is sort of beginning to get more and more frustrated with the fact that he's losing his powers, that as Luminous keeps getting the upper hand in all of these interactions they have, that music kind of continues to swell. And then other than the ones that you mentioned, which I think were all great spots there, the only thing other that I'd mention is once Luminous realizes that the sun is reverting back, and there's the music again kicks in, and he realizes that he's in sort of panic mode to go over and take care of Superman with his fists while he still can. And at some point, Superman's strength comes back to him, and he catches his fist, and it begins to meld into the Shirley Walker Superman theme, and we get sort of this triumphant crescendo to where he's crushing Luminous's hand, and then he delivers that sort of gut punch that sends him hurling across the room. So with the Shirley Walker theme in the background. But yeah, I think there's a lot of strong music for this week's episode, and some good moments there that really stood out. So I ended up giving music an 8 out of 10. What about you?
And how about that? I gave it the exact same score of an 8 out of 10 there. Yeah, I just thought really tremendous job. And again, not necessarily a ton of music that you can maybe hum to yourself like you would some of the other villain themes, but just really a great job of really punctuating whatever was going on in the individual, whether it was just that sort of general sense of dread, like we talked about when we first are sort of seeing the red sun revealed. It's just a great job all around by Mr. Carter.
Absolutely. Well, let's bring it home with our final category of the day, which of course is going to be voice acting. Not a huge cast this week, because we didn't have a huge cast of characters and a lot of the regulars. But hey, the fun time to revisit one of our voices here. Of course, was a mainstay in the in another comic universe's animated properties. So with that, let's talk about this week's voice cast.
That's right. So we have, as we mentioned, sort of in minor roles, we do have Clancy Brown as Lex, really just that one scene.
Yep.
And then we have, of course, David Kaufman as Jimmy, very briefly. We have Victor Brandt as Professor Hamilton. But yeah, really our two big players of the episode are, of course, Robert Hayes, who folks might know as from as far as live action roles go, as appearing in Airplane and then the various Leslie Nielsen Airplane sequels. But his performance as Luminous is, I'll just say, interesting. What did you think?
Yeah, I think that he had it's seemingly a lot more fun. From my recollection from the episode Target, which of course you can hear in the archives at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app. We reviewed it actually last January, so a little over a year ago we reviewed that episode. But yeah, I feel like, because he was trying to be covert about his villainy, it wasn't quite as mustache twirly evil. And this, he gets to be very, very evil throughout the entirety of the episode. I do like the fact that he taunts Superman quite openly. It's hard not to hear Tony Stark Iron Man
yes.
when you're listening to his performance, though, which if you, as I alluded to, if you're familiar with any of the original Marvel Power Hour cartoons, he was the voice of Iron Man and Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and all the other probably additional tie-in cartoons that they may have had series for the Incredible Hulk. So it's hard not for me to hear him as Iron Man, it's a very distinct voice. But I do think that his him being able to sort of turn up the campiness a little bit of the villainy and taunting Superman, it just makes the comeuppance that he eventually gets a little bit more satisfying. So I didn't hate it. I think that based on where his character was in the plot of the show, and the fact that he seemingly got extremely confident very quickly based on knowing that his adversary was kind of down and out, that I think it worked for what it needed to be. What about you?
Yeah, I think I like him I think maybe it's a little uneven for me. I think I like him in the first couple scenes when he's sort of taunting Lois and Superman in that first scene. I think he's good and kind of creepy. Or even the very first scene of the episode when he's sort of messing with the guards at the prison and everything, and he has that sort of there's sort of a weird echoey effect on some of his lines, especially when he's appearing and disappearing. So I think that's kind of a cool effect to put on there. The part that really struck me as kind of odd was when he's dressed up as these two different cowboy, or the bartender and then the cowboy and then the pirate, and when he's saying like the pirate jargon, he's just kind of saying it in his regular voice. And it's kind of, and I was like, well, that's kind of flat, because he's just like avast ye matey, like it's not bad, but it doesn't sound like he's not really getting, it doesn't feel like Luminous is getting into the character here.
You wanted him to commit a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna dress up as a pirate, like what are we too cool to do the voice? Come on, man. You're the one who dressed yourself up as a pirate. You have magic holograms. You can make yourself look like anything. You chose pirate. Now commit to the voice. Gee, damn it. But yes, that kind of struck me. But then I thought he was really good at the end when he's sort of firing the gun at Superman, and he's sort of getting really kind of more and more unhinged, and he's asking him, how does it feel to feel mortal? And he's kind of really really kind of having his big supervillain moment there. And as the yellow sun reappears, he sort of gets really manic and
finish you off.
shouts that I can still do it. I can still finish you off, as he kind of jumps at him and starts laying into him with these punches before ultimately getting his comeuppance there at the end. And that last little line there is he's got the cameras flashing and he's crying about the lights in his eyes and everything, I think is some good bits. So I guess I would say it was a little uneven for me. And then obviously our other main actor to talk about is, of course, Tim Daly as Superman. I like him in this episode because, again, he gets a lot more to do, because he's sort of constantly, as you mentioned, from the first scene where we see him lifting the desk and he has a little bit of trouble with it as he goes to sit it down. He's kind of rubbing his arm and Jimmy's asking him what's wrong, and all the way through to, when he just barely saves Lois and she's very concerned about him and she's asking him, are you okay? And he kind of very unassuredly tells her that he doesn't know, and then he flies off. Tim Daly feels like he gets a little bit more to do than in some of the past Superman episodes that we've talked about.
Yeah, he gets to show a little bit of range of emotion. You know, he's obviously, the Superman character is experiencing things that he's likely never experienced before, and he's dealing with trying to figure out what's happening, and then how does he respond once things are happening. How does Superman be Superman without his powers? You know, at what point does he, you know, become a liability to his friends and the people that are in trouble? And so there's some I feel like there's a subtle worry in the way that he delivers his stuff, because he has to deliver, like, Superman's confident as Superman, but he's also doesn't know what's coming next. He doesn't know how he's going to solve this problem, but he also has the, you know, he's got the bravery behind him, and the fact that he's headed, you know, regardless, he's still going to march into battle. He's still, you know, steadfast in his commitment to save Lois and Jimmy. So there's certainly the range of emotion. You get the beginning where he's sort of bewildered and not sure what's happening and why things are happening, and he's confused. And then as the plot goes on, you know, the doubt and the worry and not quite, and the frustration. He gets frustrated, of course, when he's like bleeding and experiencing pain. So he really gets to show a very strong range of emotions. Then, of course, the little bit of humor at the end when he finally comes out on top and delivers that last line of sending Luminous to someplace very dark. I thought that was just the cap on it. This is a very strong episode for him. I thought it's well worth noting that he got a lot more to do than he may have had to do in a lot of the other episodes that we've covered. And I think that he didn't let us down with the performance, or at least in my opinion.
No, I totally agree. I think, like you said, it's a lot for him and Mr. Hayes as Luminous to carry in this episode. We do, of course, also have a little bit of Dana Delaney and David Kaufman as Lois and Jimmy, as mentioned, but it is really pretty much you know, Superman and the Luminous story. So yeah, I think overall, like I said, I don't love everything about Mr. Hayes as Luminous in this episode, but I think he's good enough in some of those scenes. Plus, you know, a pretty strong Tim Daly performance. So I ended up settling on another 8 out of 10 for my voice acting score.
Nice. I actually went a tick higher. I went 9 out of 10. I thought that the combination between that, and I thought that his chemistry with Luminous actually is pretty strong for the interactions that they have. And I think that, you know, I thought even Dana Delaney's minor role, even the minor lines that she has, I chuckled a lot at the different lines that she had and the way that she delivered them in the small opportunities that she had. And you know, her constantly putting Clark down and mocking him even behind his back, talking about how he's missing out on the story and it's his loss. And you know, even in a very small role, she gets to, you know, Dana Delaney shines through a big surprise. But yeah, I think it's a very strong episode as far as the vocal cast is concerned, and certainly all of the comments that we had, our actors are deserving of the accolades.
Yes, and as you mentioned, I think earlier in plot, we do get the homage to the classic Superman from the old radio serials and the Fleischer cartoons. The look up in the sky from Dana Delaney, to which David Kaufman's Jimmy Olsen answers, "It's a bird," and then we look up and we see a bird. It's very funny, and the way it's delivered is great by both of them.
Absolutely. All right, Liam. Well, that will begin to wrap up the episode. So that means it's time to tally up our scores. And tallying everything up at the end of our episode today, I end up with actually pretty strong, especially strong compared to what I would have guessed based on how many times I've seen this episode. Just goes to prove to you that sometimes personal feelings will be set aside to give our accurate scores here. But I ended up with a 33 out of 40. What about you?
Yeah, and I'm just a couple ticks lower at a 31 out of 40. So yeah, I don't know that I would have expected this to rank even this highly. Obviously, this doesn't quite make it into our top pick section, but still, definitely, I think a better score than I would have expected either of us to give it coming in.
Absolutely, which I guess leads to the conversation of what about the rewatchability for this? As you mentioned, obviously this is a sequel. This is a sequel to an episode that already happened. We know that Luminous does play a bigger role in the DCAU. He does return at some point in the Justice League. So this isn't the last time we see him. So I feel like that means, this is a must watch. I'd say this is 2 thumbs up for a must watch, according to me.
Yeah, another thing I wouldn't necessarily have expected to say, but yeah, I think not only is it a pretty good, solid episode of Superman, but it also it's a fun adventure and a sequel to a previous episode, as you said. But yeah, this character does pop back up in future shows. So yeah, absolutely, I think this is definitely gets 2 thumbs up for rewatchability.
Absolutely. All right, Liam. Well, that will begin to wrap us up for this week's episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, if it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Both of those will allow you to leave a 5-star review for us. We would greatly appreciate that. Also, if you can leave a little blurb on your favorite podcast app, also, that would be great. Let people know what you like about us. And by the way, if you do that on Apple and you've done it before, you can do it again. They let you do it multiple times. So if you've done it before, thank you. And you're feeling generous and you want to support us, leave another comment and let people know what you're enjoying about it. Liam, I looked on one of those websites that ranks us this week, and I just like to give a shout out to the country of Turkey, where we apparently are number 42 in the all of the podcasts of TV, and man, I just have so many people to thank for us being so high in the country of Turkey. So thank you, all of you, the Turks out there, the Turkish, and for supporting us and continuing to listen to the podcast. But if you'd like to support us in additional ways, you can, of course, follow us on our social media. You can head over to Twitter at DCAU Review or Instagram at DCAU Review and follow us there. You can, of course, also, as mentioned earlier in the pod, check out youtube.com/thepodtower. That is where you can find our entirety of our catalog, including bonus episodes and all future episodes in video form. Even if you don't listen to us on there, if you subscribe to us and like the videos we put up, that helps us a lot. We appreciate that. Not only does it help us, it helps our friends over at Tim Talk and the Watchtower database as well. They're adding content to the channel on a weekly basis as well, so you don't want to miss that. You can also support us if you want to support us monetarily. There's a link at the bottom in the show notes here to support us, or you can head on over to our store, DCAUreview.com, click on the store tab, and pick yourself up a piece of merch. Liam, that's enough for the plugs for this week. We will talk about, as we already mentioned at the top of the show, we are dealing with the Man of Steel this month. So that means we'll be back in Metropolis again next week with another episode.
That is right. And we are the somewhat out of order way we have reviewed them notwithstanding. We are completing the Metallo quadrilogy of Superman the Animated Series appearances. Of course, he would pop up later on in JLU episodes that we'll get to down the line. But yes, we are in fact talking about it. It's time. Can only run for so long.
It's time. It's time. Is that a pun? That's a pun, I think, right?
It could be, because in fact we are talking about everyone's favorite episode of the final season of Superman the Animated Series. That, of course, being Superman's Pal, a very Jimmy Olsen-centric episode featuring, of course, the origins of the famous signal watch, which Superman gives to Jimmy, and, of course, also based on the classic Superman's Pal comic book that ran for many years in the 50s and 60s. So we will, I don't think we'll have trouble filling up an hour or so of your time next week talking about Superman's Pal. We can say that for sure.
And all that implies. That's right. But until next time, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Adios.